You do it.
You do.
No, you do
You
it.
do it so much better.
No, you do it great.
so much better.
Oh, my name's
You're
Gary
a radio
Hopper.
guy. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Representative Gary Hopper. We're here tonight. Rock, paper, hand grenades. Oh, my tie's okay. I gotta fix my tie.
You got a nice tie there.
Eric.
That's me.
Eastman.
Yes.
The Honorable Eric Eastman's with us this evening, and Carla. And I'm gonna screw up your last name.
Gericke.
Gericke.
We did this in the elevator.
I know.
Gericke.
We did it a bunch of times in the elevator.
Gericke.
It's what?
It's Gericke, but you can say Gericke.
Gericke.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought she said Van Halen. That's why it's in the back.
No,
I apologize.
yeah.
no, phonetically,
that is
they're
cool,
so
Van
similar.
Halen, yeah.
So sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh gosh.
Where'd
So
that
anyway,
come
this is the thing that I was pondering today, because we're doing a lot of serious stuff at the State House. But I was listening to a song on the radio, and there's a song, and I quote. She says, "I'd walk 1,000 miles just to see you tonight."
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
At 4 miles an hour, that's 250 hours, without rest, without stopping. That's 250 hours.
That's about how long it took me to get here tonight.
Right. So it's 250 hours, and she's not going to smell so great when she gets there.
Speak for yourself.
No, I'm saying.
Honorable
So I
Hopper.
just think it's when they say stuff in songs like that, it's a little bit insincere.
Oh, I see. I see what
You
you're
know what I'm
saying.
saying?
Yeah,
It's
that's,
just like, come on, really?
yeah.
I'd walk a half an hour to see you tonight. Sounds reasonable, or 35 minutes.
Isn't it
or
hyperbole blah blah blah? Hyperbole blah blah. How do you say that?
low hyperbole.
We're phonetically challenged tonight. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Carla,
Yes, sir.
Hi, Carla.
what
Hi.
your
Welcome to our show.
what nationality is your last name?
Oh, it's French, but I'm
French.
originally from South Africa.
That's French?
Yes.
Sure.
According to my dad.
Yeah, but he could be full of baloney, you know.
Yeah.
Dad's
you know,
all right.
definitely,
Yeah.
Dad's tend to
definitely
be.
Part
Dutch
of goes with the
French,
tip.
I guess.
Dutch.
You know.
Dutch, I get.
Yes.
You sure it's not Dutch?
He says French, but you know.
Okay, all right. I'll take your word for it, I guess.
He picked a team. It's okay. Leave him to it.
Okay, so you're from South Africa?
Yep. One of the S-hole countries of the world.
No, he didn't say South Africa.
He did say Southern Africa.
He said Southern Africa.
Yeah,
That's
well,
not the
South
same.
Africa
No,
is the
no,
tippy
no, no.
tip.
South Africa is a specific country.
Yes.
She kind of
Southern
knows that.
Africa
Is
is a few different countries.
yes.
Sure.
And South
So he
Africa
could
is
be-
part of Southern Africa.
Correct. But it might not necessarily be what he meant.
No, and you know, well, I'm from South Africa.
There we
yes,
go.
there we go.
Let's
from,
settle this.
From Pretoria, which
Okay, which one? Which one?
Pretoria is up over there in the far right corner. And
Right in the middle there. Yeah.
it's close to Johannesburg, which is the largest city.
Was that Toria first, or was it Pretoria,
and then became
then became Toria? Now is it by Toria
Well,
by now?
their Toria status is pending still.
It's Toria.
They're still waiting
That's why
because
it's
red
Toria.
tape.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, so yeah, I'm from South Africa, and I won a green card about 23 years ago now.
Wow.
And-
How hard is that, by the way?
Oh, I mean, your odds are pretty slim. The process itself isn't that complicated. You just have to have finished high school. You kind of send in a one-page letter.
Whoa! They discriminate against high school, non-high schoolians.
Yeah, and strangely enough, you know, it's called the diversity visa, and they actually discriminated over the years to various countries, including Ireland at one stage. So they're trying to sort of
Well,
pick
you can't let those
countries-
people in, right? I mean, look what happened last time. They let a bunch of them in.
We got tater tots.
Exactly.
Lots of potatoes.
Lots of.
And so, you know, I moved out after I finished law school to California, and I've been-
Wait. Okay, so what age were you when you came to USA?
I came when I was 24.
24. So you'd already finished law school, or you
Yes.
just okay?
So in South Africa, so we actually learned stuff in high school. So
Why?
instead of going to college for 4 years to learn what you were supposed to learn in high school, you go straight to medical school or straight to law school. So I finished high school when I was 16. I finished law school when I was 21, which is a fancy way of saying I'm really, really smart.
Right.
and then I found out I'd won the green card, stayed in South Africa a year to finish my law school and finish my articleship, and then immigrated to California, worked as a lawyer after taking the California bar exam at tech companies in
You
Silicon
know why there's no
Valley.
Irishmen in the field?
No.
You can't pass a bar,
Ever.
ever.
It's
had to go there.
the California bar, they claimed is the hardest in the States.
Yeah.
It's-
Kidding.
Yeah, it was certainly first time I studied as hard. I mean, it's hard when you come as an immigrant and you're like, how
Well, yeah.
hard is this going to
Well,
be?
it's the- yeah,
What's
but
the
the
standard?
The fundamental principles and system, it's all based back in English common law and things like that. So there's got to be commonalities anyway.
Yeah, and there was overlap, and the reason I didn't have to go back to law school is I petitioned the court and said, look, there are enough similarities between the California law system and South Africa's law system that just let me take the bar, and they did. And so, I worked in-house at tech companies, did a lot of sort of tech deals and that stuff.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I
So
worked-
corporate law.
Yeah, corporate law. I worked for Apple Computer for some years. The years Steve Jobs was not there, so the dark years.
The ones we don't speak of on the show.
Yeah.
Remember we have that rule?
No
Yeah.
Steve Jobs.
No. No, we could talk about Apple after he was back, but no.
Not the dark years. I actually worked on the acquisition of Next, which, when Apple bought his company back. And
Sure.
so I have some street crowd in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
And then actually went through the dot-com bubble and bust, which is sort of where my interest in economics started to come from, and sort of from there, free market economics, and from there, New York, and then New Hampshire.
What did you do in
and
New York?
Senate. Actually, I went back to school, and I got a master's degree in creative writing. So I'm very left brain, right brain. Like, I'm strongly creative and strongly logical and rational. So I think
I'm weakly strong, logical.
I can't remember which one's left and which one's right, though.
I have the same affliction. You are weekly logical. Well, you're logical on alternate weeks.
Yes.
Is really how it works.
So I just have one half. It's like I'm kind of like a dolphin.
Or is it a goldfish?
No, a dolphin.
Well,
'cause only-
dolphins are very intelligent.
No,
Very
I'm
smart.
like a dolphin. Only one hemisphere works at a time. The other one sleeps.
Which one is with us tonight?
I get no idea.
Excellent.
No. And
So you mentioned, Carla, that after New York, New Hampshire, which is a real leap. California, New York. I've lived in California as a teenager a million years ago. Been in New York a lot. I know New Hampshire's not the same place because when I moved here, it was a culture shock.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
It was a bit of a culture shock. I'd come up and visited a lot over the years before we decided to move here. I mean, what appealed to me about New Hampshire is what I think everyone's proud of here. I love low taxes. I love the live and let live ethos that's part of the state. I love live free or die. So really those were the reasons. I could have gone and lived any place in the world. Growing up, my parents were diplomats. I lived on 4
really?
continents as a child.
Oh, that's super wicked cool.
So I've lived like all over the world. I've traveled to over 40 countries. I've done really exciting things. And so for me, it's really a testament of how strongly I feel about the principles of sort of limited government and liberty that I decided I was going to pick up and move to New Hampshire, go through the culture shock. But you know what? I love it here. I mean, it's an incredible state.
You said we.
Yes, my husband. I brought him along.
You forced him.
No,
Is this like a bondage thing? Like you dragged him? Not that kind of. I mean, like
no.
That's a lurid visual tableau. You just need to leave.
I'm actually turning red. No, we got married in South Africa, and we came over together. So we went on.
So you've been married for
a long
2
time.
years, right?
Yeah,
3,
yeah.
4, maybe.
We're coming up on 24 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. You guys have been
Terrific.
through cool
Congratulations.
stuff together.
Yeah, we have. We really have had a lot of adventures.
South Africa.
Yes.
I don't know my timeline. When did Nelson Mandela get out of prison and the South African government capitulate to the pressures of and the government kind of switched.
Right.
When was that?
They had to
So,
forsake apartheid.
So, I mean, Nelson Mandela was elected in '94. I used to be a small-time, like, not like the fancy people, but, I did some anti-apartheid activism as a college student, and
So
was
that was-
one of the handful of white people who went to his inauguration.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's a great
it was
thing to
yeah.
have done.
Right.
So that was 94.
Yep.
Did it get really socialist after that, South Africa?
Not immediately. I mean, I think South Africa did several things really well. I think the fact that they did the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which
Yeah.
was really an issue of people sitting down and going, look, we all did really bad things.
Let's move on.
Let's talk about it so that we can move on, right?
Right.
And a lot of people were shocked that it wasn't a more violent transition. South Africa actually had nuclear weapons. At the time, they're the only country that's voluntarily given them up, assuming they're telling the truth.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they got them from Israel in the 70s, I think.
Wow.
And so the transition was really fascinating. I left around that time. I left in '96, so I missed a lot of it. We still have family back there. It didn't become socialist immediately, but just a lot of sort of for me that was actually a genuine learning experience. As a young person, I was like, oh my, this apartheid regime, this nationalist regime is what's wrong and evil, and if we just replace it with the right people, it'll get better. And then sort of went through the whole process, and then I started to realize, well, maybe it's not so much, the right people, maybe it's partly systematic, right?
So it's like Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Meet the new boss, same as the old
Same
boss.
as the
kind
old
of thing.
boss.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
it's a lot more current.
I'm going to have to go polish up on my cultural references.
No, they wrote that before 1984.
Yeah, but I said Animal Farm.
You
I
did.
didn't
You-
say
you did. I'm kind of
1984.
conflating the two, which
Yeah,
is
they're
not-
kind of this.
not
You two
cool.
both have the same author.
They're exactly
Called me out on it.
they're exactly the same book except different animals.
So a lot has happened that I personally am familiar with, as you know, here in New Hampshire, that you've been a real big part of. And I wanted to kind of call attention to that because it's made a lot of waves, it's made a lot of news, and it's also gotten a lot of people to be interested in living in New Hampshire who otherwise might not have. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So one of the reasons we moved here was to be part of the Free State Project. I actually ended up in leadership with them and served as president for 5.5, 6 years. I always said, when we get our 20,000 signers, I'm going to step down and do other things. And true to my word, I did that.
Do you know
I was there.
I got a friend in Ware, John Jeskivikas. He was part of that group. Do you know
Yeah.
him?
Yeah. At least from Facebook and the name, Yeah.
He's not on Facebook.
Oh.
He won't do Facebook.
So he's a true
Yes, yes.
privacy person.
He's not willing to concede his privacy just to communicate, to post.
And honestly,
memes.
I mean, there are thousands of people who are moving here, and some are sort of very out as a free stater. Others just come and do what they need to do, vote for limited government,
Yep,
run
sure.
for school boards, and those kinds of things. Out in Weir in particular was sort of my big drama, where I got arrested in 2010.
You did?
I did.
Nice.
Yes, and of course at the time had no idea. I got arrested for filming a traffic stop.
How dare
And
you?
how dare I? Yeah, and
Oh, I do remember that. I didn't know it was you, but I remember I kind of just, it was like in the periphery.
yeah, and
How did that play out? That's interesting.
so they immediately dropped they charged me with all the typical stuff, disobeying an officer, interfering with government administration, and claimed, they thought the camera was a gun, which clearly they didn't. When they told me that in the holding cell, one guy winked at me. He was like, "Ha, we got you." The prosecutor took a look at the charges and was like, "No, I don't think we should do this." So they null prossed, so they dropped all the charges against me. That day, I actually asked my lawyer to file a motion to object to them dropping the charges. I felt that strongly, that my rights had been violated.
Right.
The judge, needless to say, thought that was a little crazy. So I ended up countersuing in federal court, so out of the first district. Wheels of justice turn incredibly slowly, as we know.
Sure.
And so in 2014, I prevailed on appeal. So they kept appealing. They said, no, apparently you don't have a First Amendment constitutional right to film public officials in public. And we had a differing view. And
You had a different view from that.
and so it prevailed. Actually, my camera wasn't working that night. And that wasn't an issue for them in the case, which I think is really important for people. I want to encourage people, if you see a police encounter, film it with your cell phone. It's actually really good for all the parties involved.
I will agree to a point. Okay? If you're going to be honest, because that's what we lack in today's society, people want to get a point of view across. And so they will do exactly what we hate the media for, and is only publish that stuff that supports their opinion. So if you are videotaping the police, make sure you also post it when they're doing some pretty difficult things and helping people out. Don't just post it when the guy's had a bad day and he's being an idiot.
No, and actually I do see people do that, because the idea I'm actually going to launch a website called New Hampshire Witness, NH Witness,
Yeah.
that I hope, we can do this sort of outreach, because we know in places where, people wear the body cams or their dash cams, and then also when you have citizen activists who are filming, everyone's behavior is better, right?
Yes.
And because, suddenly, I've read several articles where police officers say they actually like it when someone does, because it holds everyone accountable and everyone's on better behavior, including sometimes, difficult person that you're trying to, arrest or whatever the situation
Right.
is. And so, in Rialto, California, where they started doing it with the body cams, which actually was a change that happened in where they actually were one of the first departments in New Hampshire that started using them as a result of my case, and I thought that was a wonderful outcome.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Took 4 years and you hung in there.
Took 4 years,
Now
yeah, and I would love to see that actually happen to all the police departments here, because in Rialto, like 88%. Less complaints, 60% less violent altercations between police and, the person, the arrestee, I guess. So, it's just something that helps. So that's definitely, that was an introduction for me to New Hampshire and sort of the culture here. And I have to say, I went to the State House, testified, really tried to, talk about this issue. And I was pretty shocked that, everyone would ask, where did this happen? And I'd say, where, and then everyone makes a joke, where, right? But then, everyone, they would just look at each other, and everyone was kind of like it was an open secret that this was an incredibly corrupt police department.
It's horrible. It was, well, it was, oh, yes, in 2000, I don't remember what date, 2002 or 3, me and my wife, yeah, it's probably around
It's back then.
2004. My wife and I had an issue, and we filed a warrant article to have the police chief's position become an elected one. Because in 2004, the
Very
chief was out of his mind. He was really, really bad. And so that actually passed.
Yeah, it did.
And it was, and this is, I don't want to take too much of your time,
No,
because
please.
you're kind enough to come on. Ed Neal, you must have met Ed Neal. If you're in New Hampshire and you're active, you've met Ed
Yes.
Neal.
Sure.
And I love Ed Neal. Anyway, so he worked on this with me, because he was part of the group that created SB 2 Towns and all this other stuff. So we get the warrant article. It goes to the deliberative session, which is the dangerous place for any free-spirited person, because then the townies can just object and destroy whatever you wanted. Anyway, so it's at the deliberative session, and one of my neighbors totally pro-law enforcement, totally in favor of the police chief, is sitting there. Then the chief got up. And this was proof of how bad he was, because it absolutely proves how arrogant he was, which is the problem typically. He got up to the microphone, held up the, when you do a background check on somebody, it's not 8.5 by 11, it's like 8.5 by 14.
Okay.
Okay? He held up a stack of them and said, if you could see the background checks on the people that signed this petition warrant article, they have records as long as my arm.
Wow.
Was that not an illegal move on his part to have
Super
run those checks?
illegal.
So he had his own news.
And if you work for the union leader, your reporter was in that room, watched it, and did not report it.
Wow.
Did not report it. The cameraman was a friend of the police chief's. Coincidentally, all the film was screwed up.
Isn't that funny how that
Amazing.
happens?
So this goes back to the theme of accountability and transparency.
Right.
Why it's always a good idea.
It is.
Always.
Then the three people from that meeting went, including myself. One of them was me. I don't know who the other two were. From the town of Ware, complained to the Attorney General's office, and they covered it up.
Yeah.
So you have my point is accountability is, if there is no accountability, there will always be abuse. Period.
And, I feel like we have an opportunity with the way tech is developed to really use that to our advantage. I mean, the point is, we do have the technology now to easily record every police encounter or interaction. And people should not interfere. You're literally a witness. You're just like, hey, you know what? I'm here. I'm just going to document this, and done. And hopefully at some stage, we can create a repository where people can upload that. Raw footage is really important. I think your point about, don't just edit it down or don't just show the negative. But there's also an encouragement where it's like, well, you know what? People will show the positive if they see the positive.
Here's a weird question. Okay. We got to get to the fact, because you also came on because you want to run for Senate. So we got to get to that too. But here's another. You're filming. You're private citizen filming. It's a car accident. There is a child in the car that's injured. As a private citizen, what is your responsibility to not expose that child to the camera? Because
children don't have a right to privacy in public.
No, wait. A cop.
I mean, public is public.
One of the testimonies we heard in thing is the HIPAA thing, that a cop can't post a video of a car accident where people are hurt, because that's part of their HIPAA privacy, because they're injured.
I heard that testimony. I don't necessarily think it's 100% accurate. I mean, I think it becomes, from a legal perspective, I'm not sure those people actually have rights. From sort of an ethical or a what's the decent thing to do standard, there possibly is. I mean, I know, for example, stringers who work for news agencies who do the car accidents and do the things at night, they do want to get the dramatic shot, but then maybe when they give that footage to the police, to the media, they might either pixelate their faces or cut that part out or whatever. So
Sure.
I think there are generally standards.
Because people are could be in very compromising positions, and you don't want the last image of your family member to be, have their, half naked on the street because their clothes got burnt off in an accident.
Well, I think that I agree in principle that really this does come down to a universal rule of decency. What the legal standard is and what the permissions are, that's another conversation, because public is public. But it makes me think of the adage, with great power comes great responsibility, and the capability to broadcast new content. That's power. It's power that's never been in the hands of the human race before up until this generation.
Well, in ordinary people's hands, I would say,
Ordinary
right?
people's hands,
I mean,
yeah.
I think technologically speaking, these cell phones are more revolutionary than the Gutenberg press, and that was sort of, that whole acceleration through the industrial
Yeah.
era and all of that.
He's a
But-
pretty cool guy, though. I mean, you can't,
Oh no, it was amazing. But these phones, not only is it the filming capabilities, but it's things like, imagine in the State House, instead of the roll call and the drama and the time wasting and all of that, right? If state reps just voluntarily downloaded an app that just every time you vote just records it and puts it up on your website. You don't even have to do the work. It's just automatically there, and your constituents know where you stand. Because there's this politicking where people are like, well, I'm going to horse trade, and I can tell you one thing. If you vote for me for Senate, you're always going to know what you get, because I have principles, and my principles are that it's limited constitutional government, the government that governs least governs best, that we should get out of the way, let people decide for themselves with their own money what they're going to do with their money, and let free markets prevail. And that's pretty much, what I'm going to stand on. So if it expands liberties and helps the little guy, I'm your gal. If it's, sticking hands into other people's pockets, I'm probably not your person.
What if your hands are cold, though? Right? Okay.
That made for a perfect transition because I actually
Okay,
did
go,
not
go.
know.
What?
I'm a big fan. I've been to a lot of the Free State functions. I've been to Liberty Forum a number of times. That's the annual event. That's kind
We
of
have it coming up, actually,
it's
down
coming
at
up
the
this month.
Radisson.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
When?
February 8th through the 10th. It's called Liberty Forum, and
Liberty
people
Forum.
can go to nhlibertyforum.com. We have great speakers. I'm really excited, actually, with, Republicans and Democrats have different views about the ACLU, but I think the New Hampshire ACLU is pretty good, and at least on this
Some
issue.
stuff that's really good.
These roadblocks, you guys heard about that up in Woodstock last year, right?
Yeah, 90 miles an hour away from the border.
Right.
Pulling
and-
over people and get arresting them for like having a joint or something stupid in the
Right.
car.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
No
it was
kidding.
it was to
yeah.
catch illegal immigrants, but the border patrol had people sniffing dogs. I don't really know how the dogs factor in here.
Drug sniffing dogs.
Well, they were drug sniffing dogs, except there was border patrol, and they were supposed to be looking for illegal immigrants.
No,
so I'm not
no,
sure.
Well, I'll defend that. In other words, if you're a border patrol, you're also looking for large quantities of drugs being brought into the United States. So I think that's a red herring. But the idea that a federal agent is wasting taxpayer money arresting somebody for a couple of doobies is
right.
is doobies
a
okay
misdemeanor,
now?
if not just a violation.
Is doobies tooled? Is that?
No, doobies. Well, I don't know. Doobies work in South Africa.
Doobies is still acceptable.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I'd been out of
Dooby dooby doo.
But anyway, so they're Gilles Bissonnette, who's doing the case, and was in court last week, and
Sure.
it sounded like it was a good case. I think it's all about states' rights. It's about I mean, strictly speaking, according to the definition that the Border Patrol says, right, that anything within 100 miles of the border is their territory. According to that logic means none of New Hampshire is sovereign, and that everything is a warrantless, search and seizure zone. Basically, they can just say we could pull you over at any time, and of course we don't want to live like that. So he'll be at Liberty Forum talking about that. We have Jack Spurkos coming in. He's from Iowa, I believe, but he's come before, and he gives really great, funny talks. He's a podcaster. He has like 150,000 daily listeners. And then, a bunch of us who've been here a while. I've been in New Hampshire almost a decade. I'm coming up on. And so, I'll be talking about some of my projects. And it's a fun time. People should check it out. And
Hey, I get some T-shirts I need to sell. Is that a good place? I got some.
What do they say?
It's a picture of a porcupine who's smoking a doob, and it's and the caption is "party animal."
Yeah?
That
Okay.
that could probably be popular there.
Try to hawk them outside the venue. See how long you last.
Well, you should
Great.
come anyway because we have a legislators cocktail on this Saturday night.
Yes,
I'll,
we
I'll
do.
send you an invite.
All right,
Yeah.
well, I
No,
don't-
we'd love to have you.
I'm allergic to alcohol, so
Yeah, me too.
I break out in
It's
handcuffs.
important that people know that what this is about people understanding their fundamental liberties that they already have that are given to them by a constitution and that they're actually born with.
You were
You know,
endowed
these are
by
natural
your
rights and
creator,
all that
not,
kind of thing.
that's the basic foundation is you are endowed by your creator
Sure.
with certain unalienable rights. i.e., these rights are something the government
Can't put a lien on.
can't take away from you or put a lien on.
All right, but then
because that's true. But let me just to the point of the value of the event and the activities of the organization that puts it on is that there's a lot occasionally of mudslinging and occasional bad press that flies around in the mass media in this region regarding Free State activities and regarding NHLA and all that kind of thing, and just to debunk some of the misunderstandings that exist in the general public amongst people who aren't involved but could be curious if they were acquainted with this in a more intellectually honest fashion.
Right.
This is a great opportunity to do that. Wouldn't you say?
absolutely, yeah, and it's a great way just to meet like-minded people, or also, as you say, if you're just curious, come meet us. And I will say this, in the 10 years I've been here, either people have never heard of Free Staters. If you talk to them, they're like, right on, yeah, you think like I think, let's be
Right.
neighbors. And,
Sure.
for the most part, the negativity, or the mudslinging comes from people who do want to stick their hand in your pocket with cold hands and
Ooh.
take your money and
That's not-
decide how to spend it for you.
Well,
And-
the thing is,
And your doobies.
well,
And
well, your doobies. Well, there's two parts to that situation. Most communities, calling New Hampshire a community in this instance, resent any group that comes into it to change it from out from under it. In other words, well, we liked it the way it was. So there's always going to be that mentality. They're called carpetbaggers, in the South when the North went down there and started trying to do things their way.
Right. How many of the past
Wait.
10 governors were born in New Hampshire?
Correct. Okay, listen. So what is it?
Sorry, the Doobie,
The Doobie
Brothers.
How many of the Doobie Brothers were born in New Hampshire?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a trivia question. We'll cover that at the end of the broadcast.
So
All right, we want Spliff next.
So that's part of that resentment towards the Free State project. But the bigger threat to New Hampshire, okay, because it is the live free or die state, the bigger threat, and nobody talks about it, are the people who come from Massachusetts with a profoundly liberal, progressive, communist SOBs come north and start trying to impose that, and they do it all the time, and in particular on Election Day. So that, to me, is a much greater threat to the culture of New Hampshire, but nobody talks about it.
No, and I actually totally agree with you. And the other thing is just, let's just be realistic. The number was 20,000 people were going to sign this pledge. And, if we're lucky, half those people will move. If we're luckier, in the meanwhile, because we're talking about these issues and we're sort of pushing them to the forefront again to remind people who are here. The New Hampshire advantage from the 90s, I think slowly sort of got eked away because of those Massachusetts people. Look at me not saying the word I want to say.
or from
Wow.
elsewhere. But people with sensibilities that they want to turn this state into where they came from.
Right. With the irony being, oftentimes people will move because they see the value proposition here, the lower taxes, no state income tax, all that great stuff. But then they come and they're like, suddenly I want all these services, right?
Yep.
And back to the technology concept, why can't we have a Uber-like app for plow guys, or, there's a lot of things that are going to change where we can actually see the marriage of sort of free market principles and letting people keep more of their money and, cutting out that middleman. We'll say it's government for the sake of argument here, where they're wasting 80 cents on every dollar, and just say, hey, you and you do business. Look how easy it is.
Right.
And better, more lasting innovation and solutions come out of it too.
South Africa, what was the laws on firearms?
It was very difficult for black people to have guns. It was easier for white people. Growing up, South Africa was a police state. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Things were definitely better if you were a white person. And as I said, I spent a lot of time overseas, so I didn't really have it as such a constant. But when I was in high school, I was in boarding school. My parents lived in Stockholm, Sweden. And so, I'd stay with my grandma on weekends and then go home to Sweden. I would go to Sweden twice a year and see my parents for a couple of weeks. And, so when we were in high school...
Did you end up with Stockholm Syndrome from that?
That is a discussion for another day.
Wow.
Well, she didn't view the parents as captors necessarily because she voluntarily...
Oh my God, what is it with the captors and the bondage?
That's a
what is the
reoccurring
matter
theme.
with you? What is the matter with you?
Oh no, I'm clearing the air.
But
with a doobie.
by way of example, for me, moving to America, I really had this concept of the American dream. I had to, really study the Constitution. I had to, take the bar exam again. And, these are such strong principles. And after 9/11, I could just see the change, right? Like the march step here towards that sort of militarization and towards the police stateness that I had escaped. So that's partly why I feel so strongly about these issues. So when I was in high school, I was a volunteer fire girl at the school, and we had the fire department, in conjunction with the police, come into our high school, detonate smoke bombs, not inform us it was a drill. And I remember the experience of being so terrified. There's smoke everywhere, and I was literally leopard crawling, like they teach you in the Army, upstairs under the smoke to go save my friends upstairs. And when I heard, 3 hours later, oh, by the way, this was just a drill because, the terrorists are coming, I was like, wait a second. And honestly, maybe not realized it at the time, but now that I'm older, looking back, I was like, who were the terrorists there? Who terrorized me?
Right.
Not the bad guys I'm supposed to be scared of, but my actual, the people you're supposed to be able to trust.
Right.
Little double speak going on there.
Yeah.
Newspeak.
Very
Newspeak.
Orwellian. Yeah, very Orwellian.
Newspeak.
And we say that here all the time now, right? The newspeak is a real thing.
It is. It is. You make a very powerful point because you've grown up in and seen firsthand the effects of this kind of statist incursion into everybody's private lives and the imposition of this kind of authoritarian sort of climate. Most Americans haven't.
Right. And actually, that's a fascinating part about the Free State Project is there are a lot of legal immigrants, people who left places like Russia, Ukraine, South Africa, a lot of communist Eastern Europe countries as well, right? So a lot of communist countries. And so, when we hang out and we sort of talk about, where you're from and what's your story, right? It's really interesting because these people are passionate about saying, maybe we can't fix. I'm not confident we can fix everything, the whole of America, but I do think that we can keep those ideals in New Hampshire. And in order to do that, people have to start standing up and saying, you know what? No, this is not acceptable. No, you don't get to do a backdoor income tax, even though it sounds like for such a great reason. It's always a great reason.
Carla, it's for the kids.
I know.
Jeez, what's the matter with you?
I know. And,
You're so heartless.
I know. And I'm not. Honestly, we know. I've studied history, and we know actually that these ideas work. We just kind of have to go back to them.
Right. Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
It is. Yeah, Second Amendment.
Yeah,
Back to the Second Amendment.
I'm endorsed by the NRA. I don't know if that's good or bad.
So-
I can shoot.
I don't care.
Okay.
I don't care. I don't care about that.
It means that you support
No.
your fellow human beings'
I think that
right
is
to self-defense.
No. That's not what I'm getting at. Because
is.
I have heard so many politicians. They say, "Do you believe in the Second Amendment?" Well, I belong to the NRA and I go hunting. So what? Why?
Oh.
I don't care that you go hunting or that you go shooting or that you have a gun. What I care about is why is the Second Amendment imperative?
It's to stop against tyranny. You know who didn't have guns? The Jews. They were disarmed in Germany and all the other countries. There is a reason why Switzerland was never invaded because, they all have to all males have to do military service and everyone has to keep a gun in their house. So, obviously you're right, to keep and bear arms is in order to be able to defend your rights.
What's the 10th Amendment to the New Hampshire Constitution?
It is the right of revolution.
So how will you have a right to revolution if you can't apply it?
You asked the right person.
I know, I did.
A pop quiz like
Yeah,
that.
pop quiz.
Wow. Yeah, you can't have the right of revolution if you can't fight back. And honestly, in a state like New Hampshire, it has a very low homicide rate.
Yep.
I mean, my favorite story that came out of constitutional carry last year was I saw a conversation on social media on Facebook, and it was a lady who was just outraged that constitutional carry was now legal in New Hampshire, and she didn't feel safe, and from now on she would only spend her vacation dollars in Vermont and Maine. And I was like,
Vermont and
you
Maine.
mean the other states that have constitutional carry?
She walked
No
right
idea.
into that one.
No idea.
What a great setup.
Yeah.
I love it when people put their foot in their mouth. It's actually Vermont's been constitutional carry forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
Since
It's
it was
such
chartered.
it's a weird state because it's such a contradiction because you have on the social issues they're totally left,
Right.
but it's like the ultra left and the ultra right said we don't care who you sleep with as long as you don't take our guns. They go, okay, we're done.
Well,
We've made a deal.
But
We got a
here's the
deal.
beauty
Right?
of states' rights is why not let Vermont be, its little socialist hippie bastion, and why not let New Hampshire be free markets and limited constitutional government, and then people can decide, oh, I like this more or I like this more, and people can vote with their feet.
Yeah, because
And that's how it was supposed to work. We weren't all supposed to be beholden to D.C., who does not care about you at all.
No, I mean, the thing is, if you live in New Hampshire, you can, work long enough to buy a van, paint flowers on it, and then move to Vermont.
Go
Right?
retire over there, see how long the system works.
With your guns
Okay,
and
no,
boobies.
I thought of this business idea, and it's so messed up. I don't know what goes on in my brain sometimes. So I was in Walmart, and I felt so bad. There was this lady, a woman who had it must have been a 3-year-old. You know how 3-year-olds can just go off the rails.
Yes.
Little kids going off the rails. Nanny, you're mean. Nanny. She's screaming at her grandmother, right? Nana, you're evil and all this other garbage all the way through the store. You can hear the kid all the way through the store. And I thought, you could make a lot of money by having like a van out in the parking lot. You put.
Yes.
You know why? We already know the phrase, because it's for the children.
It's for the children.
Maybe in this case it's not for the children.
I was just thinking because I was thinking in a logical way. It actually is a pretty cool idea, right? Because you could have 2 or 3 kids in there or whatever, big bus or something, and let the kids play while mom and dad go inside. But then I thought of the optics of that. And was like, oh,
Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah,
Especially if it was playing that creepy ice cream music.
that's when you want to stay away from phrases like free candy. And,
Free candy, yes, free
just
candy.
bad.
This
Although
way.
I wish someone would do that same concept with for dogs, because like I don't have children, but I have a fur baby, I guess, and
fur babies.
she's a rescue and she's very nervous, and so it's hard to like leave her alone. We usually try and tag team it, but sometimes you want to go
That is
out.
actually probably a good idea for dogs.
So
Yeah.
if you had like a van that, could park even on Saturdays, on Sunday at the end of Elm Street, and, there'd be 2 or 3 competing ones, and, it would just be, oh, I could leave my dog with you for a couple of hours, and, while we
Well, I
go
don't-
get
why don't-
dinner.
okay, well,
you know
you-
why?
you're-
Because it's not legal. You know why anything that's a great business idea?
Wait, what's not legal?
I bet you would have to get like 70 million kinds of licenses to do that. Let's try it.
No, you do. You're on a good track though. But here's one. Why don't they have
Go ahead.
Uber for walking your pet? So you come down the center of Manchester, okay, and you just want to go shopping. So you use your Uber app, and there's somebody walking
Get
the
a
dogs
dog
in the
walker,
park, and he's just walking a couple
yeah.
of dogs, 3 dogs. He's having his time. He's
That's a great
smoking
idea.
his
You should have
doobies.
designed the app first before you put it out on the air. Man.
Here's the thing. It's the designing of the app part that's hard. So
is.
maybe
Not for
we
me
could-
because I won't do it. It is actually a pretty cool idea.
That is a cool idea.
Because you could.
I would
'cause
probably
a lot,
use that.
A lot of
service.
people love dogs, and wouldn't mind walking. I'm sure there's teenagers that would cotton pick and love to walk your dog for a few dollars,
Oh
so they
yeah.
could buy new video games and stuff.
Yeah.
So, what are the greatest misconceptions that you bump into? I mean, you were president of the Free State Movement for a number of years, right? Half a decade, a little longer, and handed that baton over to Matt Phillips. And I imagine you've heard it all when it comes to people's misconceptions about what the agenda is and what you're trying to accomplish. And I don't just want to limit it to the Free State Movement itself,
Right.
but what do we hope to do as a state and as a society that's better than the way it's being done thus far?
So
In a nutshell.
the main criticism one will hear is, you're coming to take over the state, as was just said,
Yeah.
right?
Take us away.
So that's where we're talking about the numbers game. So 20,000 people out of 1.3 million people is not enough to do anything. So the way I see it is, don't worry, because most of us, actually, I would say, the one thing that sort of unites all Free Staters is a belief in the non-aggression principle, which pretty much says, don't hurt me and don't take my stuff. And the golden rule is, in return, I'll do the same for you.
I say that
and-
to my wife all the time.
Does
don't-
it work?
No.
And other than that, if you actually believe in freedom, everyone's idea of what that is different, which
Yes.
is the beauty of the concept. Because that means, you get to decide what your jam is, and I get to decide what mine is. And as long as we're not hurting each other or taking each other's stuff, it's all good, right? So for the people who are coming here, I think it's very important for us to just communicate that idea, right? So the idea of, we're going to take over, or, you want to take over government and make it in your image. And it's like, well, one, that's probably not possible, right? Two, it's like, well, what is that image? It's sort of the cliche of you, I just want, I don't know, a gay couple to protect their pot plants with a gun, right? It's just sort of like you get to do whatever you want, just as long as you're not hurting or harming someone else.
So if you get elected to the state senate, you're going to introduce a bill so that gay people can protect their pot plants with guns?
You realize that's going to be taken out of context now.
No.
You can actually, other than the pot part, and that's pretty much just because, politicians aren't actually listening to their constituents.
I'm sorry,
Almost 70% of Granite Staters
What'd she say?
want weed to be legal,
Okay, so okay.
as do I.
Hey. So I switched. I don't know if I said it last week during the vote or after. Did I say this? I might have said this. Whatever.
You switched your vote
I switched my vote.
From what to what?
in favor?
My prudence told me,
Is that your wife?
no,
It's a Beatles song. He listens to
Fiancé.
it all the time.
my mistress, Prudence, we don't get along very well. So,
It's very prudent of you to say that.
yes. So, no, Prudence told me that it would be, because as a legislator, you're legislating for your constituents in spite of what you may or may not want on a lot of things.
Hopefully.
First you abide by the Constitution, period, and then there's other considerations, but you should not be the main consideration. Anyway, so Prudence dictated to me that it would be wise to wait a few years and see how SAT scores were working out in places like Colorado, mental illness, because there is a linkage between teenagers using marijuana, especially the marijuana nowadays, which is pretty potent,
Can be.
and schizophrenia and things like that. So see how that plays out in the mental health field and on the outcomes of children going into school over a period of a few years before we legalize it here, and then the horse is out of the barn.
So you were saying, give us data.
Give us data. Let me see the data.
Okay.
But that unintended consequences of medical marijuana, which we passed a few years ago, that a person, once they take that medical marijuana card, in effect can't have firearms anymore, and or if somebody's dying of cancer and they want to use marijuana to control their appetite or pain, the one time they're the most vulnerable in their entire life, you're taking away their ability to defend themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that variable trumped Trump prudence, in that if somebody doesn't have to get the card and they can get marijuana from a legal place, then they don't have to concede their right to bear arms, because the government has no right to even find out if they do or they don't.
And I'm hoping someone fights that case. I think that's going to be really important case law, because as you were saying earlier, so we have inalienable rights, right? And it's like, it's a right. So I don't think by saying, you know what, if you want a medical marijuana card, we're suddenly going to take this right away. This right is guaranteed by the Constitution. So that whole thing, I know this is what people are saying, but I think it's fuzzy. I don't think it's solid. And I think someone should fight that, and I hope they do. It's
Today?
No.
Hey, wait.
And she will.
Did you pass the bar in New Hampshire?
No, I didn't.
Are you Gunsta?
Probably not. You know, it's been a while. I mean, I am obviously passionate about the law, and definitely have that part of my mind that likes to concentrate on those kinds of issues. But, you know, in New Hampshire, I think you can take 5 cases a year, even if you're not a member of the bar. I think.
Yeah, we had that in Judiciary Committee. It's sketchy, because some of the judges will say no, you can't, and it gets weird. But yeah, theoretically.
So, you know, if the opportunity presents itself, but I also believe in that theory about, you know, you shouldn't be your own lawyer.
Right.
So, you know, I certainly, you know, when I fought my case, I had a great team out of Concord, Seth Hipple and Steve Martin.
Great guy.
And
Steve Martin's a great comedian.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
so, yeah, you know, I hope someone does fight that case, because, you know, we're all just saying this is how it is now, and I'm like, I don't think it's supposed to be like that.
No, I agree with that. I agree there is a conflict between your right. I don't understand how it is even. I was visiting a friend of mine in Exeter, and I was coming home on my motorcycle, and I thought I was on a specific road, and I got screwed up. And I looked up, and there's a sign that says Route 495, next exit. Okay, well, that meant that I was in Massachusetts.
I was just going to say, that does not
Okay,
sound like
'cause
you're
495 is not that close to the border anywhere in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And I said, oh, crap. So I got no helmet and my pistol in my pocket.
Ooh.
Now, the idea that I could go to jail for a year when I theoretically have the right to bear arms, I can go to jail for a year for taking a wrong turn. There is no way on God's green earth that the founders of this Constitution ever foresaw a point at which somebody could end up in jail for having a gun just because he went down the wrong road.
Yeah, no,
It's-
and that's part of that idea of sort of the over-criminalization. I mean, for me, a great example, and I believe someone reintroduced the everyone should wear safety belts thing this session again, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it comes up every time. But one of the things I love about New Hampshire is that it's not a law, right? If you're under 18, you should wear it, in common sense for all. I love that slogan, right? Because it's sort of like, well, it's your choice. And I always wear my safety belt. I think it's smart too, and more than 70% of people in state do. But the difference is to say, we're not forcing you. We're not saying it's a law, because the minute it's a law, now you create an opportunity where it's like, well, I'm going to pull you over.
Right.
Because you didn't have your safety belt on.
It's just another excuse and another thing they can write on their list of
For them to be invasive.
for them.
Yeah,
to be invasive.
and I'm all about, unless
Someday we got to get together with a whole bunch of lawyers and figure out all the felonies that are 1 year, because a felony is a year or more,
right.
and cut them down to 360 days.
That
That'd
would
be
be
good.
that would be neat.
That'd be good. That would go down easier.
Anyway, we got
Time's just about
10
up.
seconds. Carla, thank you for hanging out with us.
How'd that happen?
That went so fast.
Eric, we'll see you next week. Next week we're talking about genital mutilation. All right, see you later.